Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 99 Problems and the Bing Ain't One.
Nice.
I'm Trisha.
I'm Taja Custody.
I'm Gray Williams.
I am Will Silver.
We got the whole band together again. Oh, it makes my heart sing. Or it makes my heart bing. I don't know.
Yeah.
We got a lot of AI news to talk about, so let's not waste too much time. First, we're going to talk about the enshittification of TikTok, but part of that has to do with some revelations that have come out in the last couple of weeks about some different things about TikTok that we might not have known. And first of which being a secret heating mechanism that has been happening behind the scenes. Craig, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when we take a look at social networks, the idea there is that users, us, should be dictating what it is that we see in front of us through our actions based on an algorithm that the social network employs. We've kind of got, and this kind of goes for a lot of things as well, even down to things like search results with Google. The more something is relevant, the more that we click on it and stay with it, the more that Google sees that this thing is good, so it serves it up to other people. The idea of like tastemakers hasn't really been in sort of the public consciousness. But with TikTok, they've now confirmed that there is this thing, the heating button, that basically says the For You algorithmically defined page, which is something that they haven't really said how it works. They've been very cards close to the chest, keeping it secret. And so this button basically takes things and can add traffic. Now, it just puts the content in front of people. It doesn't make them like it, but it puts the content in front of people. And as more people see it, more people inevitably will like it, which will then drive more views algorithmically. So this thing is kind of like, it's a bit of a cheat code for TikTok, and TikTok uses it, according to what we're reading, to basically to court influencers and to court new clients from agencies and from companies in order to get more advertising on the TikTok platform. It's a bit of a big bomb.
Now, this is not the only issue with TikTok. We've got a few that we're going to touch on quickly here, and this kind of ties into what was referred to by Wired as the enshittification, and this is something that happens to a lot of platforms as time goes on, and they tend to, as their growth starts to level off, they tend to look for ways to continue to wring more value out of the existing client base. Now, we've seen things with examples like this with, say, Facebook and Twitter, with increasing uses of the algorithm to capture our attention, to increase our dwell time on their platforms. And then sites like Amazon, e-commerce retailers like Amazon, where when we go to do a search, I don't know if you've noticed, but search on Amazon seems to be getting worse and worse over time. And it gets cluttered with lots and lots of sponsored picks, Amazon's picks, all this stuff. And even advanced search techniques don't seem to work that great, and you have to wade through all sorts of crap to find what you're actually looking for, and hopefully it's not a knockoff. That's, and there's sometimes listings get replaced even though they look like the same listing and there's a different vendor behind the scenes. So with TikTok, we're seeing this this tweaking of the algorithm behind the scenes, the thumb being pressed on the scale for organic visibility, depending on what TikTok wants people to see. And of course, there's always concerns about, are they at the beck and call of the Chinese Communist Party to try to help shape the narrative in other markets around the world? Because of course, TikTok isn't available within China itself. They have their own version called DALL-E, but there's accusations that could be something that TikTok might just have to do to please their governmental masters back home. So with that in mind, some of the other issues that we're looking at have also to do with the security concerns. In the United States, they're looking at banning TikTok altogether, and we saw that under the previous regime in the United States, so to speak. Why, Gray, do you think that the United States government wants to ban TikTok?
I mean, looking at social networks in general, the vast majority of them fall under their jurisdiction. ByteDance does not. And there's been a lot of talk about how TikTok is basically sucking up information from the lives of people around the world and feeding it to the Chinese Communist Party. And information being, quote unquote, the currency of the information superhighway. It's a throwback to 1992. I mean, we are talking about Al Gore's rhythm, so that makes sense. But looking at all of this,
you did there.
Thank you. Looking at all this, things like location data. We have seen from everything like Garmin watches, when people use Strava on American force bases around the world, can be a security risk. The access to people's pictures, the access to people's videos. Lens AI came out last week and said, if you upload your pictures to us, we delete them as soon as we're done with them, because there was this massive outcry that this AI program was capturing people's facial recognition data. So why would the United States ban TikTok? Fear in a lot of cases. And I would say probably mostly unfounded fears. They want to look under the hood. And I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable, to be honest. Looking at how these algorithms work, realizing that, yeah, they do have their thumb on the scale of this. They are promoting things that they want to promote, and realizing that this company exists in a country where there is legislation written in that the secret police can come in, talk to you, control things, and you can't talk about it. Yeah, some of those fears actually are genuine. The stuff where, maybe they're going to look at your pictures and your videos and try to bother you, Joe and Jane Blow, in North America, probably not so much. But if you're maybe an ambassador's kid, a senator's kid, yeah, this could be something that could happen. ByteDance has shown here that they are willing to control the network and not let the network control itself. So it's something I think that I don't think this will end up getting banned. I think there's the allure of money is probably too much that ByteDance is going to stick to its guns on this, unless behind ByteDance, the CCP does have their thumb on the scale with a heating button of their own.
So we've seen some institutions banning TikTok on their own, regardless of any federal government action. In the United States, at least 20 public universities have taken steps to ban TikTok, including restricting access on school devices and when people are connected to school Wi-Fi. Tasia, do you think part of this whole issue with the U.S. and their concerns with TikTok is like, here's a Chinese-owned social network that has over a billion monthly active users, that is hoovering up all sorts of information, personal and behavioral, regarding its users, many of whom are from the West, including the United States. Meanwhile, you cannot access Facebook and other American-owned social networks in China. So do you think turnabout is fair play? And one of the conditions should be, sure, we'll let TikTok remain as long as you let some of these other networks into China. What are your thoughts on that?
It's not really an even argument, is it? So, the government of China has banned those networks, not for the same reason that the US government has made partial bans and is considering doing a full ban on TikTok. So I don't think you can argue that it'd be as simple as saying, oh, well, we won't ban TikTok if you just open up Facebook and, the like again. Unfortunately, it's not that simple.
Should it be part of the equation, though? Because it seems like it's an uneven playing field for, in terms of soft power. That's one of the things that United States and Western culture more broadly has had, and there's lots of people in other parts of the world who appreciate whether it's the music or movies and TV shows from there, and social media as part of that. But with the Chinese Communist Party actively trying to censor what can come in, they've got the Great Firewall and the like. Should this be a bargaining chip that do you think is legitimate, despite it's kind of like the whole thing with the two Michaels in Canada, right? Like there's it was like two separate issues, the two fellows being accused of spying and that were basically kidnapped and detained in China because the CEO of, or one COO of Huawei was under house arrest in Vancouver while awaiting extradition to the United States for various issues. So I mean, unrelated things can still be bargaining chips.
Well, we should all be really concerned if China decides that that's going to be their bargaining chip, because then it does mean they are indeed tracking us more than we think as consumers, and they really want the technology to stay here. So that would be my view on that.
Well, we'll see how they react if a ban actually does go through. Another angle to the whole TikTok thing and social media more broadly, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Will, I know you have some young people in your life, nieces and nephews, and who have social media accounts and whose parents have let them on at certain ages. And I think all of us have, friends who have contended with that issue. But TikTok seems especially addictive. It's like in Instagram is the whole scrolling, but it's how these things rewire our brains, because we're scrolling until we get that quick hit of endorphins of something that actually tickles our fancy. And some of us who maybe aren't on TikTok actively have experienced that with, corollaries in Instagram, such as Instagram Reels, there's Facebook Reels, there's YouTube Shorts. But part of it is how the interface is done, and TikTok has really got that nailed, and their algorithm is really, really good as well, and seems to get to know your preferences exceedingly quickly. Will, what do you think of this news from the Surgeon General in the United States saying 13 years old is too young to begin using social media? So that includes things like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, and the like.
It's interesting because, some of my nieces and nephews, their parents kept them off all social media until they were 13. And then there was like a ceremonial, like you can set up an account and all the adults in their lives, including myself and my wife, were encouraged to add them as friends and make sure that, there wasn't anything untowards, going on in their account or posted or anything like that. So it is ironic that now they're saying 13-year-olds it's too young, but you don't know until you know. I mean, this is all new information. This is we're still learning as we go. Social media is only like 20 years old, 15 years old, something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting and something for parents to consider.
Some people are saying 16 years old is a better place to be looking at. I mean, brain development has a lot to do with it. And, quite frankly, our prefrontal cortex isn't finished developing until we're 25. So then maybe there's a whole lot of things we shouldn't do until we're 25. But according to Pew Research, 95% of teens age 13 or up have a smartphone. Can you believe that? And 97% say they use the internet daily.
Yeah. It's not 100?
Yeah. Among 13, 14-year-olds, 61% say they use TikTok, and 51% say they use Snapchat, which is still, people don't talk a ton about Snapchat, but it's still a thing.
Here's the other thing about that 13 years old for my nieces and nephews was holding out. That was being restrictive. That was like, you got to wait till you're 13 until you're a teenager. You can't do it while
it's not hard to fake a birth date on your app, on your sign up process.
Yeah.
But I think too, like this article does a good job touching on like these vertical video platforms, but like YouTube is also a giant issue when you want to talk about that same thing. Like, I don't know if you guys are like have ever been on like YouTube Kids, because like with my nieces and nephews and stuff, like I'll just hand them my other device and it's like, oh, go scroll it, don't buy anything, and it's that immediate gratification, and it's like they can't even finish a video before there's like 4 or 5 more along the bottom that it's like next one, click to, and it's like oftentimes like an immediate frustration if it's not tapped right away, or if they're not, like if an ad starts playing at the end of a video and they couldn't tap the next video, or the video doesn't autoplay. And so I think that's like a little bit of what some of these articles were touching on in terms of like that's how it's rewiring the brain chemistry. It's not staring at a screen necessarily. That's the bad thing. And it's not necessarily the content. It's how the content is delivered and that type of format, which is quite interesting.
The dopamine hit from the immediate next video.
Yeah. Immediate next video,
a bit of a side...
right here all the time in the palm of your hands. Whereas back in my day.
Another sort of loosely related story is we were all on a family trip, and my niece and nephew were watching the TV in the hotel room, and I was watching them while my sister was off, getting some food or something. And the program they were watching was at an end, and my niece turned to me and said, again. And I said, no, and again. It doesn't. It's like, well, the TV at home does it. Look, 8-year-old, you don't know how the world works yet.
Exactly. On demand, when you want it, how you want it, very short clips, because you lose the interest. So that's kind of the interesting thing. But
so the average TikTok user browses for 52 minutes a day. Average, right? So there's some folks bringing that down, like me, and there's some folks bringing that way up.
Yeah, it's amazing how time can fly. I mean, just like when you're in the zone gaming and whatnot, but it just,
hey,
I mean, we've seen it with sometimes, we've sent each other a few things here and there just on Instagram Reels, and I only go in there like once every couple of weeks nowadays, because I realized, like, holy crow, I should really be sleeping instead of doing this, finding stupid things to send to Will as a payback for the things he sends to me, usually regarding cats. And
yes, I have an Instagram problem. I think it's well acknowledged at this point that is my social media platform of choice. And I love sharing things with friends. I share them with all you guys and other people. But it's, I don't even want to calculate how long I spend, because if I have like one spare moment, I will be on Instagram. Like, and I'll Instagram scroll while we're watching TV. Like, I couldn't even add it up how many hours I spend on Instagram, but it's a fair bit.
Well, we'll have to start a private group, social media detox for momentous folks. Now, maybe we could direct people into slightly more productive type of addictions. Great. Instagram's co-founders are back with Artifact, which is kind of like TikTok for text, because, that's what the kids want. They want text. They want news stories. They want to dig into the pressing issues of the day. Now, the founders of Instagram, Kevin Systrom being one, they designed a pretty good product with Instagram. Is this he and Mike Krieger? Have they jumped the shark with this? Do you think this is going to go anywhere? Or do you think this is like too little too late, trying to be like an RSS 2.0, like Google Reader, and get people into news? Or are there too many other places to get news nowadays, whether it's Reddit or Apple News or whatever is being fed to people through Twitter and Facebook, which, the algorithm always concerns me when it comes to news. Do you think this has got any legs to it?
I think it does have legs. It's interesting. Like looking at this, Artifact, first of all, was the name of a now failed project from Valve, and probably the first of their projects that's truly failed in over 2 decades. So it's great the name was available. Like thinking of the technologies that have been sort of brought back by Gen Z there, we've seen resurgence in vinyl. I think it's mostly millennials that are handling that one. We're seeing a resurgence in people writing things, like actually physically using pens and paper. There's been a massive surge in people looking for services to improve their handwriting, because it hasn't been taught in schools anymore. And looking at how the world has taken this visual angle, and you got to be pretty, or you got to make pretty things in order to succeed on social media. And then suddenly now, there comes the idea that maybe we can take a second, slow down, and read a little bit more. This is like, just something about the idea of this fundamentally is grabbing onto some part of me that's like, yeah, no, this is this does actually get us to slow down, maybe turn on the thinking brain and maybe take the feeling brain down just a touch and start looking at an analysis done by us as opposed to analysis done by machines. Yeah, I've they had a sign up for this. I think at one point I haven't received the invite yet, but there was a sign up for this somewhere, unless I just gave my data to somebody that is not related. But still, I'm excited about it.
It sounds like there will be some manual curation. There is an AI element in there for sure, thanks to some of OpenAI's technology. Will, do you think something like this could help you break your Instagram habit and get into consuming a little bit more news as opposed to funny cat videos?
I don't know. I mean, I think I like the funny cat videos and images because I can consume something without reading the comments. So maybe if there wasn't comments.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to see once Artifact opens up what it actually looks like. I have to confess, even though I've been taking a serious look at scaling back some of my subscriptions, I've been quite enjoying some of the stuff that's being surfaced on Apple News because it's got access to so many, you know, decent news sites in there, and some of them are from legacy media, of course, but there's lots of long reads in there too if you want to dive deep, you know, things from the Atlantic and the New Yorker and others, as well as, you know, local and national news providers, both Canadian, American, and worldwide. So I've been quite enjoying Apple News, so I'm kind of like a little loath to cancel that as if
well,
because
there was. Oh, sorry. I was going to say there's something called The Athletic. I don't know if any of you guys know about it, but Tristan, it sounds like you do. But it's I know quite a few people that subscribe. I don't, but I thought it was crazy when I first heard about it. It's like subscribe for sports news. I mean, I could find out about that anyways. Like there's tons of stuff on TSN or whatever, but there's really good quality articles, and that's kind of how they market themselves. And there's a lot of great information on there. And I don't know how well they do, but you know, just qualitatively, I know a bunch of people who subscribe to it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like people will pay for content and news that's relevant, high quality, consistent, and there's all sorts of niches that people have been able to exploit. There's, you know, the newsletter business is huge. You know, witness Substack and then others like Ben Thompson who've rolled their own as well. Speaking of rolling your own, Samsung had an event last Wednesday, so it was just after our last episode of Momentous Live, so we kind of missed that. But just a quick recap of some of the devices we saw there. There was the Samsung Galaxy S23 line, including the Ultra, which is basically the replacement for the Note. They retired the Note a couple of years ago. The Ultra does feature the pen, but one of the big things was a 200 megapixel camera. So the megapixel wars continue. You know, that we may have discussed in the past how the more pixels you have, if you're not increasing your sensor size, it can result in a lot of noise. But in this case, we've got what's known as pixel binning, and that's what Apple's doing with its more recent iPhones as well. You know, you have a 48 megapixel sensor in the iPhone 14 Pro, but that pixel bins down to 12 megapixels, and that's kind of what Samsung's doing here. But it's going all the way up from 200 megapixel and doing 16 by 16 pixels and capturing all that light as if it's 1 pixel. But both the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra and the newer iPhones will provide a pro mode that you can activate to let you access every single little pixel and end up with a file size in the iPhone case that's 75 megabytes or more, and I imagine Samsung's are even larger. But apparently, the amount of detail in there is stunning. Will, you know, we're all mostly in the Apple ecosystem here. Tasia, of course, straddles with the Google Pixel phones, the last couple of Pixel phones as well. And being a bit of a photography buff on and off over the years yourself, with something like this kind of crazy pixel count, and admittedly, you know, improving algorithms, computational photography, just like Apple and Google are doing. Is it the kind of thing that might tempt you to switch over to Samsung? I mean, maybe.
Probably not. I mean, I think the other thing to keep in mind, as you said, is that it does become a bit of packing stack sheets. And I think some of these new mobile cameras are getting quite good, but there's something to be said for sensor size, lens quality, things like that. So it's not just how many megapixels you have that makes it look better. I mean, it can be a lot of the interpretation and sometimes the some digital voodoo going on, but there's something to be said for actual physical size of the sensor or the quality of the lens that really changes that. Now, having said that, it's nice to have a phone that has as good a camera as possible, but I also have a good camera if I really want to go out and take pictures. But if my cat does something funny and I need to take a picture of it quickly and not go up and get my DSLR, I think my iPhone's good enough for that. So or whatever. So it wouldn't be enough to get me to go and buy a new phone and B, a phone on a platform that I'm not familiar with.
Well, they do say the best phone in the world is the one you have with you. Tasia, with your experience with the last couple of years worth of Google Pixel phones, how interested are you in getting your hands on these other offerings also in the Android ecosystem? Because there's some pretty wild specs here.
I mean, what I have learned from Google is basically like software can do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to this type of thing. So like computational photography is giant and huge in this. So I don't really get caught up in like the big numbers like necessarily.
And look at all those lenses though.
Yeah.
Are they triggering for people with trypophobia?
Yes. Why don't you just put buttons down the whole side of the damn thing? I mean, what is that? It's awful. But anyway, so like I don't get caught up in that. I like more of like the guts, the inside software, the stuff you don't see, the stuff you can't touch, but makes a big difference. So nah, it's not doing it for me. And those lenses on the back would drive me absolutely bonkers. Well,
you notice they've gotten rid of the camera bump, and each of those lenses just protrudes on their own. I hope that they've got sapphire glass lenses or something like that too, so they stay reasonably scratch free. But Tasia, we got to get you on the Samsung PR list so you can get some of those models in your hands, and then you can do direct comparisons with iPhones and Google offerings.
Right.
Because you mentioned what Google's done with the software. The computational photography has done wonders for their lower end phones, like the 6A and the 5A, which are still using old sensors, and they're just bringing more and more out of them with the software side of things, which is quite remarkable. For those who are interested in the differences between the three Samsung Galaxy S23 models that were revealed last week, there was the S23 standard, basically, the S23 Plus, and the S23 Ultra. We'll include a link in the show notes. The first two are the same size. The Ultra is the big boy of the bunch, and it's got it's heavier, larger battery. They've got all of the same processor. The Ultra has an option with additional RAM, so they've got 8 gigs across the board, and then a 12 gigabyte option if you go for some of the one of the higher storage tiers. Storage starting at 128 all the way up to 1 terabyte. Depending on which model you choose, and of course the camera package is crazy town on the S23 Ultra. But it wasn't just smartphones that Samsung revealed last week. Also the Samsung Galaxy Book 3 Ultra. So they're leaning into the Ultra naming convention there, which is going to be interesting. There's rumors going around that Apple might do an iPhone Ultra, maybe to one higher than the iPhone Pro Max, or to replace the Pro Max. It sounds like we're running out of adjectives when it comes to some of our tech naming. I guess extreme is a little too 90s. We're not going back there. A little too snowboarding and other extreme winter sports. But Gray, we all use laptops here pretty regularly, and Samsung. Samsung kind of is like in the they've been kind of low key, maybe second or third fiddle to the likes of Dell and Lenovo, but they keep releasing decent laptops as time goes on. And with the Galaxy Book 3 Pro, 3 Pro 360, and Book 3 Ultra. Man, these names are killing me. We've got with 3 different options for people with different needs. But on the surface, I mean, aside from looking kind of like MacBook inspired laptops, like a lot of laptops have for the last 10 years or so, what can you tell us about how these look spec wise and performance wise for those who are on the Windows side, and what kind of the best they can get there?
I mean, looking at it from a visuals perspective, or something that can produce high-end visuals, the 4070 is a hell of a powerful chip.
That's the graphics card. Yeah,
that's the graphics card. Yeah,
okay.
I believe they've got a hybrid Iris 3 graphics, and then the 4070 as well. So, like, great, amazing. Like any other Windows laptop, these things are saddled with Core i7 and Core i9, which means battery life is not going to be good enough. It's weird, but like looking at the M1 and the M2 and all the iterations thereof, the battery life on these things is way too good. It like there are days where when I actually do run out of power, I'm like, when was the last time I charged? It's just there's a whole lot going on with these devices. So like great for Samsung. And if you're looking for a Windows machine, my friend John's actually in the process of replacing his absolutely ancient computer, and he's like, which one should I go with? I'm like, he's like, I've got one picked out. I'm like, great, go with that, because
so it's for the Ultra. They claim to have a long-lasting battery. I have yet to be able to find any actual specs yet. I guess when people start getting these into their hands in a couple of weeks, we'll start to see. But to your point, like that is one of the things. Like you can pack very powerful Intel chips into these things. There's some YouTube videos been coming up last week comparing the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M2 to some crazy MSI Raider, I believe, that's got the, was it like the 4070 or 4080 or 4090 or something? And it's like, performance wise, it can blow away the M2 on a fair number of tasks. But as soon as you're on battery power, then it goes down to a third of its power, and then the M2 is really shines, like with the efficiency cores there. So the Galaxy line, just looking at what we know so far, for someone who may be looking at a Dell or a Lenovo, does there seem to be enough here, at least like given the 3 different iterations, the 360, which the flip back screen, kind of like a Lenovo Yoga, more of the standard model, and then the Ultra. Do you think any of these should be contenders for someone looking for a Windows laptop nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in the Apple ecosystem, if you're looking for a Windows machine, the Ultra is a hell of a sexy machine for $2,400 US. It's great. If you're looking for something that is like tablet flexible, you've got an option here as well. So yeah, I mean, these are really great options. Dell, I think, I haven't seen much out of them in a very long time. Lenovo has actually earned the ThinkPad name. So that would actually be what I would be comparing these to. And yeah. I think this does, like with a 4070, as a gamer, I identify as a gamer.
There we go.
This would actually be something that I would look at.
And to be fair, yeah, Dell has been rocking it with the XPS 13 as a MacBook Air competitor, sort of on the Windows side. That is, one of the the gold standards for the Ultrabook category, and they've done some wild things there. I think we've talked about them in the past, how they basically got rid of the trackpad. You can't even see the edges of the trackpad now. It's just like, put your hand where a trackpad should be, and there's one there. And the thin and lightness and reasonable power. I think they finally moved the webcam to the top rather than the bottom, like the up the nose cam that they had for years, which was a very strange decision. Mm-hmm. So if people are looking for something in the Android ecosystem, smartphone wise, or in the Windows ecosystem, laptop wise, we'll see once people start getting these in their hands, the reviewers, the YouTubers, and the like. And looks good so far. Samsung keeps going. I mean, there's one thing about them; they just keep iterating.
As long as there are people out there for them to steal ideas from, they'll be fine.
Well, again, there's that whole thing of them. Who's stealing from whom, really? I mean, anyway.
No.
All right. Are we ready? We've got a whole bunch of AI stories before we get to our key AI news. But again, we're going to do kind of what we often do, a little high-level overview of some of what's going on, and we'll just cherry pick a couple of these things, and we'll get to some of our key announcements for the last couple of days. Every month or two, we have a little AI overview episode. The last year, there's been so many AI stories, and public-facing AI stories. I think that's where the difference is in the last year with the generative image-making tools like DALL-E, DALL-E 2, DALL-E Mini, which is now Crayon, Stable Diffusion, Diffusion B, which you can download onto your M1 or M2 Mac, Midjourney, and the like. But there's more, and we'll touch on some of the other types of things people are doing with AI. But there's a few issues that are coming up, and some AI experts are increasingly afraid of what they're creating. So we've got a variety of quotes from developers and professors. Part of the issue is that sometimes we don't, the people who are creating these things don't really understand how they work. We saw that a few years ago with AlphaGo, which was Google's AI that learned how to play the incredibly complicated board game Go, and used strategies that people have never seen before and never didn't really understand what it was doing, and it managed to beat the world master at Go. And some people are like, oh, this is interesting. Not really sure how this works. And the problem is letting these algorithms become a bit of a black box. There's the human training, and there's the feedback from humans, and then there's the feedback from other machines. When you get into adversarial networks, GANs, generative adversarial networks, where you got computers challenging each other and trying to make things more and more realistic or more and more competitive when it comes to gaming. So there's one little issue for us to chew on a bit. Somewhat a bit more anodyne in some of the things we've been seeing with ChatGPT, which was released at the end of November, and a lot of us have been having fun with for, writing everything from. Actually, I'm not going to say what we've been writing. I'm going to get Tasia to share with us some of the things that she's been doing with ChatGPT in just a sec. But one of the things is that we had Mint Mobile do an ad with Ryan Reynolds. I think he's an owner or co-owner of Mint Mobile, and even did like a YouTube commercial written by ChatGPT with a prompt that they wanted to include a joke, a curse word, the fact that they're still going, and they're sort of there as a counterpoint to big wireless. And they did the ad, and it wasn't terrible. Tasia, what's your experience been with ChatGPT, and tell us some of the things that you've been using to write it? Because you did a video a couple weeks ago, and we even did a little podcast on that too.
We did. So I have been using it, and I still use it to write all of my promotional posts. When I have a new YouTube video up, I just tell it to, promote my new YouTube video about whatever. I even did it about itself to promote ChatGPT in a Facebook post. Exactly.
Meta.
And then and then now write it as a tweet, and now write it as an email newsletter. And so that's quite literally all I do is change. It usually writes it in like a collective format, so like our latest video, so I just change it to like my latest video. But I pretty much leave everything else. It even puts hashtags in there for the appropriate platforms, puts little reminders for me to put in a link. So I'm sold.
Hey, you've been using it for some client stuff too?
No, that's me.
I said, Gray.
Oh, sorry. So basically, I put it to the test. So looking at how this particular client likes to have their videos done, I thought I'd write my script, and then I would feed it the prompts that should produce results close to this. I spent about an hour and still wasn't able to get something that I was like, this is client facing. And I think the difference there is for things like social posts, there's sort of a standard cadence, and it understands what people are looking for in a social post. When you're asking it to take sort of creative leaps, it missed every time. And I'm fascinated to know how long it's going to take I don't think it's going to take long to close that gap, but it never really got close to what I thought was good for this thing. So it's interesting. Social posts, yeah, I'm right on board. But the actual creative, I'm like, you're just not there yet. Maybe I'm just being too harsh of a critic. I don't know.
Well, so much of the quality of the product that we can get from these platforms, including the image generation platforms, has to do with the prompts that we feed. And there's a lot of trial and error, it seems, to get that out of there. Will, you've been using is it Midjourney for some of your cover art for your beats lately?
I've played with a few things. I mean, some of them are behind paywalls or subscriptions or, you know, invites and stuff like that. So Midjourney is the one that I've used a few times. Obviously, we had some fun with ChatGPT, and I've used that a few times. But yeah, Midjourney is the one where I keep on getting 25 free prompts and just kind of ride that when I need to.
And how many prompts does it take on average to get something usable for your purposes?
I think it, you know, honestly, it's getting a lot better. I've noticed this, you know, because I've kind of done this 3 times where I've gone in and done some prompts to try to get something for a graphic, and I kind of almost use it like free stock photos. You know, I edit them heavily as we've seen in some of my other loopers, and you know, I use it as sort of maybe as part of video game box art. You know, I'll do all the video game box art, but then the center image will be something from you know, Midjourney. I find it's getting a lot better. The prompt that I did the other day, I pretty much got stuff I could use on the first prompt. I'm finding the quality is a lot better. I'm also getting better at the prompts, and I think other people are getting better at prompts, and I'm learning from them. So things that I used to write sentences like, a guy's walking down the street and he looks menacingly. What you really want to do is menacing, comma, guy, comma, 4K, comma, Unreal Engine, comma, digital painting, comma, strong, comma, you know, things like that. And it's not like a sentence where,
comma,
comma, yeah,
correct body proportions, comma,
yeah. Well, the other one is full
number
body.
of fingers.
You almost always have to do full body because they'll just give you some dude's head or some lady's head. It's like, wow, that's too much head.
Next topic.
Well, I was just going to say, can we recognize the fact, though, that a lot of the AI systems now are far better at handling continuous tasks than Siri? The follow-up is great, whereas Siri seems to have immediate amnesia. And I am so sorry. I'm going to stop kvetching about this, but I am so friggin' tired of Siri. Please carry on.
Yeah, there's one other thing. A lot of work to do there. There was so far
one other thing about
so far behind.
One other thing about Midjourney is I follow a bunch of things now on Instagram, which are, and I've sent you some of them, Tristan, some of the more egregious ones. And one of them actually did a video. It's called Life Under the Dome. And it's this guy who does this fictitious, like it's the dome and there's weird people who live under the dome. And one of them, he actually did like an automation of the face where it was talking, and it looked very realistic because we know there's all these, you know, talking programs or whatever. And so he did a prompt, then he made it talk. And one of the things it said was, "We're weird under the dome. Stop making fun of all our fingers." And I sent that to you, Tristan, because that's one thing you always point out is how many fingers and how many teeth they have.
So many fingers. And then we see like when they do these retrofuturistic computer consoles, and there's like so many keys, probably because they have so many fingers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we touched on very briefly in some past episodes, all these AI tools aren't just for generating images or text. There's also some audio creation tools. One of the more recent ones that was announced in, I believe it was earlier in January, Microsoft has something called VALL-E, which has not been released to the public because they reckon it could be misused, but it can mimic any voice from an audio sample as short as 3 seconds. And if you've listened to any of the samples, it's crazy banana pants. And you can see why they think it might be a little bit dangerous, but this kind of stuff is going to get out sooner or later into the public's hands. And there's all sorts of details on how it all works. it's wild. And of course, the more sample, the larger the sample size that it's given, the better it does. But it can do amazing things just with 3 seconds worth of content, whether it's a public figure or, people like us who've got our voice out in the world, and next thing you know, we're on the phone with a bank, trying to reactivate our accounts, and people using our voice to get scammed. And that's a thing that people have talked about could conceptually happen. I'm not sure if it's actually happened yet, but especially with more voice print technology being implemented with some of these systems. So for authentication, it's like, so the genie on this side of things is close to getting out of the bottle. On more audio stuff, there's a fun tool which is publicly available called Riffusion, kind of like diffusion. It's a take on Stable Diffusion, which was one of the generative AI image platforms. But you can go in here and tell it what kind of beats you might want, and it'll make beats for you. Well, you're into beats. Are you afraid this is going to take your job away? But you could do some bubblegum Euro dance. You can do acoustic folk violin jams, or just
Where was this 2 months ago when I had to do a Euro beat?
Exactly.
I had to learn the chords for Eurobeat.
So what do you see as being? Oh, look, they've even got a die you can roll here. Tropical deep sea, jazzy clarinet with maracas, deep smooth synthwave with a dreamlike atmosphere, funky human music. Oh, what is this human music they speak of? Well, what do you see this tool? Where do you see this in the creative process for someone like you? Do you think you could actually pull some of this stuff and use it for yourself, or maybe just more for inspiration? Or what's the angle here?
Yeah, sure.
Is this or is it a toy? Just don't, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I played with it a little bit, and it's interesting. I think it still has some ways to go before it's really very useful. One thing that would be interesting, at least rather than I guess an actual practical application for me or for people making music, was, can we download the stems and take a look at them in a program? So we could, or could we download a MIDI file of the drums or the key progression or something like that? That way you would really get to a point where it would change the way people make music. Right now it's just sort of on command, just sort of churning stuff out. Yeah. But if you could actually download the MIDI files, that would be crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of wild and very, there's some weird audio artifacts that are happening and whatnot. But I think as a proof of concept, like what's going on behind the scenes there is kind of interesting. And as we've talked about with Jerome, friend of the show, Jerome Matthew, and the increase in prevalence of AI tools in his field in audio engineering and production there has been wild, especially with recreating certain types of room sounds and whatnot, and being able to apply that to sounds, make it sound like you're recording in a stadium or an amphitheater or a church or what have you. Lots of interesting stuff going on there. Now, we're having a lot of fun with some of these toys and tools, and sometimes they're actually helping us with work. There's some other issues that are kind of relevant here, and people are concerned, for example, about the future of work, and there's some issues here. And Gray, I'm going to throw to you in a moment on this. Sure, we have access to these creative tools, but are our own creative muscles going to get flabby, do you think? Then there's things like inaccuracies, biases. Plagiarism is one concern more when it comes to the, like say ChatGPT is creating something, it's because it's new, it's not particularly plagiarism per se, but when it comes to some of the image generation platforms that are scraping content and in building and using that to inform the algorithm, there are some real world implications there where we're seeing styles being co-opted. Not sure if that's copyrightable or not, but sometimes we've talked about this before with, you're seeing the remnants of a signature in the corner of some of these images. There are Getty Images is suing the makers of, I believe it's Stable Diffusion on this very topic, because some Getty Images images are actually getting caught up in the scraping efforts. And because you see like evidence of watermarks and the like. So that's another kind of issue. Then there's the whole notion of certain types of work just being phased out, like a lot of the kind of work you see on Fiverr, for example. So do you think this is all bad, all good, somewhere in between? Do you have faith that we can work our way through these issues? Because this is, in a lot of ways, this feels like a kind of an inflection point. Let's put it that way, with all the stuff we've been seeing in the last year.
It sounds like you were actually sitting in my class last week, because we had exactly this discussion, exactly down to the words. I think we went with infraction point, in homage to Glass Onion. But
I see.
gotcha.
Yes,
So looking at this, when the wheel came along, humanity did not collapse. When the buggy whip went out of style in favor of the car, it didn't collapse. The challenge right now for us as a species is to decide whether or not we're going to use this to make humans do more work for the same amount of pay, do no work for no pay, or actually leverage this thing and maybe get the machines to do the work. And because they're going to generate value and they will generate money for people, tax that money and have it go to the folks who no longer do have that work. This is the 4-day work week. This is the 3-day work week. This is the no-day work week that we are getting closer to. And the idea that we have to work to make money made sense when we needed us to get things done. When we don't need us to get things done anymore, maybe we can actually stop working and start being. So yeah, this is an inflection point for sure. And there's some decisions that have to get made here, which is just like, what is the value of human labor versus the value of work? Looking at this and my own experiments with this stuff, it's not ready for prime time in a lot of places. It is in others. And so for the folks doing that work, it's probably very uncomfortable right now, where you're like, I'm in danger. But we shouldn't be. Right?
Ralph Wiggum style.
Yeah. There's no reason. I'm in danger. There's no reason why the jobs that are displaced by this should not be taxed and have that money go towards the folks who've lost their jobs. We got a lot of decisions to make in the next little while. This is only going to get better. And we've seen in 18 months, this has gone from, Mr. Roboto to, it sounds like me. Yeah. So, should we be scared? Maybe. If being scared motivates you to do something and talk to your elected representatives and maybe talk to your employer, and let's see how we can actually integrate this in such a way where it isn't harmful to us. So yeah, if you're scared and you're motivated, great. If you're not scared and you're motivated, great. If you're unmotivated, go ask ChatGPT if it can write you a motivational speech on what to do about it.
Exactly. Just do it in off hours so it's the servers aren't overloaded, unless you're paying for the premium version at $20 a month. Less than $42 a month. So when Tasha and I were talking a couple of weeks ago on her podcast, it came up about the aspect of these things being tools and how we use tools like the plow, right? We're not plowing fields by hand anymore. We're not usually using animals anymore, at least not in the developed countries. We've got machines to do that for us, to make things more efficient. We have the printing press, we've got the internet. So all these things are tools, and we have had people who have resisted the adoption of these tools. With ChatGPT, with the concerns from teachers and college professors, understandably, but the savvy ones are getting ahead of the game and understanding how to use those tools, using some of the detectors, with varying degrees of success. But just there are some things you can do to kind of help you detect the type of output that's coming from these things, kind of whether it's a straight up watermarks or just signs. Like the ChatGPT, a lot of the stuff is kind of generic sounding and has kind of formulas to it, but it's just going to get better and better. Speaking of ChatGPT, one of the other sort of hidden costs or human costs to it that was also highlighted recently has to do with some of the human training that was used to help make it so good at what it does. And we've seen similar issues with people like content moderators working for different social platforms, whereby they paid, in this case, paid people from a subcontractor in Kenya, the data labeling team. People had to go through and sort through all sorts of content regarding, child sexual abuse material, bestiality, murder, suicide, torture, self-harm, incest, and so on. For people making $1 to $2 an hour, $170 a month, which actually in Kenya is a reasonably good salary. It's an above average salary, but doesn't really, I don't know if it really can accounts for the danger pay involved, like the trauma that one might suffer from that. Because we've seen with some of the again, contractors working for these social platforms who are like having to go through and, ban certain types of material, like that stuff that you actually end up seeing leaves a mark. I think, Will, didn't you and I talk a few years ago? Didn't you have a friend whose job, or am I thinking of someone else?
This is me. Yeah.
And they were working for the Provincial Film Licensing Board. What was their job and how did it affect them?
So I was, I did a newsletter for the Arts Co-op at my university. And there was a student who was in my co-op who I interviewed because it was infamous. It was called The Porn Job. And there was someone who was hired by the BC Film to watch pornography and to check for things that were banned. And they hired students because the full-time employees couldn't watch it anymore. So they hired students to go through these adult films and make sure that that people look like they're the right age. There's no animals involved. Like there's a whole list of things they have to check. And every movie that has to go through that if it's being shown here. So they hired students to do it.
And what kind of, and how did that work out for the students? Was that like A-okay, or I can never look at another human being again?
This is the other thing, is that he did say it changed the way he looked at things. And it was damaging, and there was a reason why they hired people to do it. The other thing is they would try to try to cleanse the palate once in a while he got to watch, Star Wars before, this was episode 3. This is how long ago this is. He got to watch Star Wars before it was released in theaters. There was he got to watch a couple of the big summer movies before they were released for free because, they try to give you some benefits to the fact that you're watching porn 6 hours a day. So
sorry, we damaged you. Here's early access.
Here's Star Wars. At least it's not another bank scene or a pizza delivery boy.
So this raises a question. Will AI be able to write better dialogue for porn?
Couldn't do worse.
The answer there is there's dialogue. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's another example of the, I guess, ethical complexity that is not only inherent to human endeavors, but online endeavors when you've got network effects. Because nowadays, can you imagine people trying to review all the porn online, for example? But that's actually where AI, at least when it comes to imagery, we talked about Apple's abortive efforts in the whole detecting of child sexual abuse materials, and they kind of backtracked on that. But Google and Microsoft had been doing things for a while, looking for visual fingerprinting and whatnot to try to rid the world of the scourge of that kind of stuff. But sometimes things go wrong. But just back to our main topic of the mainstream AI sort of thing. The big news in the last couple of days is regarding Google and Microsoft. Now, a week or two ago, we had an announcement from Microsoft and about an OpenAI, and I think we may have mentioned this in the past because Microsoft had previously invested about $1 billion early on in OpenAI, which was co-founded by Sam Altman, who's the current CEO. Folks like Elon Musk were involved in the early days as well. He's no longer there. And he was an original investor. But then Microsoft more recently has invested an additional $10 billion. And it's a sort of a strange kind of setup. They're not exactly not for profit anymore. There is a profit element, but there's a cap on how much profit can be made by any investor. And there is a repayment scheme, which is a little exotic, to reward Microsoft for their faith and investing in the platform. And that is is manifesting in some direct results, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Then we had, of course, Google trying to get ahead of the game. There's a couple of different things. There's something called Claude, which they bought, and then there's something called Bard, which they announced just yesterday before Microsoft was being a big announcement. And we're going to finally throw over to our official momentous Google correspondent, Tasia, to get us up to speed on what is happening with Google and Claude and Bard, also known as Bard Apprentice. And then we'll get into Microsoft and what they're doing with Bing. All right, Tasia.
Panic! No, I'm kidding. if you read any article, it's like Google's panicking.
Yeah.
Are they? I don't know. They've had Lambda, whatever. We've talked about all this.
They brought the founders back in for some like brainstorming or something.
Yeah, they brought the founders back in after they pushed the panic button. But basically, I don't think they're like far behind at all.
Just
because
publicly, maybe. Yeah.
Publicly, exactly. Yeah. They've been sitting on a lot of tech, so kind of like what you touched on. They have not released a lot of this tech to the public because of the implications it could have, which my argument would be they're sitting on way more powerful stuff than us regular old people could handle. But what Bard is, and they were calling it Bard AI, and some people just refer to it as Bard. It's all the same thing. It's a ChatGPT competitor. But where it gets really cool is that you have to picture that it's also going to be, well, powered by Google. So think of how we use Google now to ask, specific questions and get, high quality answers and responses back, and all of the power that is behind Google. Plus, if this, works as ChatGPT does, it'll be in more of a conversational tone, and you'll be going back and forth with this AI. It's going to be really interesting. It says it's coming to the public. Right now, it's like limited release and testing. It's coming to the public imminently, and we wait with bated breath to try it, to see if it will take off like ChatGPT, or if this is, first to the game wins. I don't know.
Now, do you think that this seemed like this kind of an announcement came out of nowhere yesterday. Do you think they're trying to take a little wind out of the sails from Microsoft's announcement today?
Probably, because Microsoft had a doozy.
So let's get into that. So one of the products of Microsoft's announcement into OpenAI is integration of ChatGPT into Bing and the Edge browser. And they had a big event, a private event today to showcase some of that stuff. And a lot of us are familiar with the sort of features available in ChatGPT. Well, imagine being able to do that in your search engine, and hence the code red situation at Google, because how will that affect what people do in search engines, and how does a search engine like Google, or Bing, which is a distant number 4, not even number 2, because YouTube is, I think TikTok's number 2 now, YouTube's number 3, even though we don't think of those two as search engines, but just by search volume. And so Bing is, I guess, kind of number 4 in that situation. But Google has, they're 82% of their revenue comes from advertising. And if they are, Bing, people move to Bing, that's one thing, but even how does Google display ads in a contextual way? I mean, Bing came out, Microsoft came out today and said, oh yeah, there's going to be ads right from the get-go. They're not going to charge people, but there's going to be ads. So what was your take on what Microsoft showed off today in integrating ChatGPT in this slow roll over the next few weeks into Bing and the Edge browser?
Well, first, you can go to bing.com/new and you can join the wait list.
Already did, yeah.
And this we talk about things like creeping you out. This is where it's like, where does reality end and like other world begin? Because the thing when you think of like your typical search engine, and we'll just say, sure, Google, or even if you're talking about Bing, I guess, I don't know who uses that, but it's like you're searching for like a specific answer to something, and then not everything is going to be exactly appropriate answers, but you're going to get generally some type of cold factual things coming back. One of the biggest things ChatGPT warned us about when we started was that, like, hey, first of all, this only goes back so like up to so recent, so we can't pull a lot of recent stuff, which makes me question this new Bing integration a lot, which is another reason why Google is going to be so powerful, because it can pull newer information. But Bard, I should say, not Google. But so the question with this then is, if you're just doing it all in a search engine now, where do you decipher like what's fact, what's fiction, what's reality, what's just AI making up a conversation with you? So that's kind of the real question here. And where do we draw the line, I guess? So in theory, I like it in terms of like not having to go to a separate website and then do, you know, we talked about this with Clubhouse, right? Like, this is why it didn't work. It blew up and then it faded because, like, I just wanted it all in one spot. I don't want to have to go to another app to do this one thing. So theoretically, it makes sense. Sure, let me do this right from my search engine. But morally, does it? Ethically, does it?
What's going to happen to traffic to all those source websites? I mean, Google has been contested for that very reason in the past. You know, when they're giving instant answers and scraping data right from websites. Yelp has, you know, accused Google of that very thing because their traffic cratered when they're just Google's just scraping data and showing it. So it's called the zero click thing there. Now with Bing, with some of these canned examples on the new bing.com/new that you can play with, it does look like it's pulling some live internet content in there as well with the one search about the car models. They're talking about 2022 car models, which, to be fair, that information would have been released in 2021. But I would imagine that in order to be useful, and maybe this is going to be a function of GPT-4, which should be coming soon. Maybe that's what's going to be powering this ultimately. That like if it doesn't have live access to internet data, it's going to be much less valuable to people, especially, there's only so many, three-course menu ideas or kids party ideas or poem ideas that one might need to generate. We've lost Gray's visuals. Gray, do you still have your audio?
Yeah, you do. That's twice that's happened with this camera. I think it's overheating.
You've got some thoughts on schema, and that schema can mean different things to different people when it comes to the web. Whether there's Open Graph Protocol and the like. What's your take as regards schema and things like Bing and ChatGPT?
Well, so this is the interesting thing, and like looking at the idea of zero click. Google's been training people to do this with schema and with structured data, and so the idea here is that might be back. I am back. So the idea here is that basically they've been asking users to build their websites with structured data so that Google would more easily understand, what is on that website, or what is this thing all about. And there's something called slot 0 on the page, which is the answer box, which comes in before even the ads on the page. And I think this was Google looking at this going, yeah, we're going to have this as a thing coming soon. It was mostly focused on things like voice search, but it provides perfect information for an AI driven search tool. So to Tasha's point, yeah, they're kind of already way ahead of the game with this. It's a really interesting sort of thing to consider, that they've actually been digging in data in a way that supports them for years. So like Microsoft, welcome to the show.
So there's other sorts of fun and games that people have been doing with AI, and like all good things, they sometimes come to an end. Before we get into that, of course, Google's having an event tomorrow. So they did their little announcement yesterday to kind of preempt Microsoft's event today. Google's having an event tomorrow about search and AI. So they're promising information on search, maps, and beyond. So we'll have to tune into that. And maybe that's what we'll be talking about next week. Go live from Paris. But just another little bit of AI news. There was something that came on my radar last week, and it was called Nothing Forever, I believe. And it was basically like pseudo Seinfeld with AI generated characters, very heavily pixelated, AI generated scripts and environments, and it was very bizarre. It was almost like absurdist kind of comedy, and it was there was thousands of simultaneous viewers going on. You would feature some very loosely Seinfeld-esque music in between scenes, inappropriately timed laughter, Jerry Seinfeld-esque stand-up bits in there as well. And it went on for a week or two and was wild. And then it's been suspended because due to a glitch in the AI, one of the stand-up routines, Jerry, the quote unquote Jerry character, they all had different names, started making some transphobic jokes somehow. We saw a similar situation with Microsoft AI a year or two ago, where it basically turned into a racist teenager. So this is just an example of why we can't have nice things, but it might be back if they can fix the AI glitch. So the account is still there on Twitch. It was streaming on Twitch, and we'll see if it comes back. Did any of you guys get a chance to check it out?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you, and I described it as Leisure Suit Larry meets Seinfeld. I didn't know the extent of the Leisure Suit Larry. I meant more the graphics than the content.
Yeah.
But meets ChatGPT. So it was just kind of this stream of consciousness that was somehow, like you say, absurdly funny.
Thanks for reminding me that was you who brought that up. I shared it with a bunch of other people too, because it's like, what is this? But it's the kind of thing, like if you smoked a lot of dope, or pot or weed, as the kids say nowadays. I mean, I could see how it'd be really funny because it's kind of absurdist, and it's just. And then the chat down the right hand side, the chat panel was going like a mile a minute because people are just waiting for certain keywords to come up, or just like different kinds of absurdist moments and whatnot. It was wild.
I think the one that you pointed to was one character said, well, do you know what the best topping is on a pizza? And then it cut to the exterior, and you're like, I need closure.
There was no response from anyone. And then it cut to exterior. It's like, come on, guys. But that's part of the fun, part of the journey, right? All right. So let's get to our picks and our projects, and we'll let Tasia go to bed. You guys ready?
My bedtime reminder went off on my watch.
You're a slave to technology. All right. Who's got their picks in here? The Owl House. Who's that?
I got 2 picks.
Oh, you only get one. Tasia's got to go to sleep. Tasia's got no pick this week.
The Owl House. You
got mine.
This is absolutely adorable. It's a kid's show. It's about a young girl who wants to become a witch. She's being sent off to summer camp, and she finds a door to a magical kingdom where she's learning to become a witch, and it's charming and it's wonderful. And apparently, there's a character in the second season that reminds somebody of me, so I started watching it. I'm 12 episodes in, and I adore it. So carry on.
So
what Disney Plus?
What age range is it most appropriate for? Do you figure?
I'd say 42.
Good answer.
Okay.
It doesn't seem childish, so I've enjoyed the jokes. The animation's great. So yeah, kids of all ages, really.
Kids of all ages. All right. Will, what's your pick of the week?
I got 2 picks, but I'll be quick because I'm double picking. One of them is a set of headphones that I got not too long ago, and they were specifically for DJing. It's like most headphones, it's alphabet soup. So it's the HDJ X5BT. They are Pioneer headphones, and you can spend a lot of money on headphones, especially DJ headphones can be $600, $700. These are a lot cheaper than that. And, they're not the best that you can buy, but they're pretty darn good. And they've got a lot of features that are good for DJs. They've also got Bluetooth in case you want to listen to something, on the go when you want a set of cans rather than your earbuds. So maybe you're on an airplane or something like that. So they're pretty good. I've had a good experience from them so far, and I can't complain. The other thing I had to add here was I bought some fader caps for my mixers, and one of them is freaking Boba Fett.
Nice.
So
Oh
I
my
could,
gosh.
and I also got a Optimus Prime.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that was my I am an adult.
Show us the Optimus Prime again, a little bigger here. And so that goes on one of your many Vestax mixers. You're the one,
Yes.
whichever one you're currently using.
Yeah,
Wow.
it can go on any of my mixers. It can go on my Pioneer or a bunch of my other mixers. So Vestax included.
My DJ name is literally 3PO, and there's one of these things here. I got it.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
I got it. Yeah.
There you go. You should get it. We can send
They
them an
are
affiliate
running
link,
out.
Will.
Those
Yeah.
are apparently limited. They ran out of the Stormtrooper and they're not making them, they claim again.
Fair enough. Yeah. Do you have like a, we'll talk offline. I'm excited.
All right. What else we got here, folks? Things going in the last minute, and I try to keep up. Oh, my pick. My pick. How about that? Where did it even go? Did I close the window? So I last weekend, a weekend before last, I watched myself a little movie that I'd heard about a couple of months ago, and finally got a chance to watch it. And that is The Menu, and that is available on Disney Plus. That starts Rafe Fiennes, also known as Ralph Fiennes, as a high-end chef. And of course, Disney Plus doesn't show the trailers properly on here, so I'll just turn that off. And hilarity ensues. His restaurant is on a remote island, very exclusive guests, cuisine critics, restaurant critics, washed up celebrities, and others. And then there's all sorts of beautiful food shots. But there's a bit of a twist to it. Things go awry, and Anya Taylor-Joy is one of the protagonists in it. She does a great job. But Ray Fiennes is just he plays I don't know, like frustrated and a little bit evil very well.
Yeah.
So that is The Menu on Disney Plus.
I've watched it twice in the last week. I'd say if you haven't seen it, don't watch the trailer, just go watch it.
Good advice. And my lovely wife Stephanie, she's not a big fan of the horror, the scaries, but it said in the description that was like suspense horror comedy, and we actually did watch the trailer, and that actually got her on board. So I would say if you like weird, suspenseful, or scary stuff, just go for it. But it's not that bad. It's not like gory or anything like that. It is just kind of is a bit of a puzzle, and well, not puzzle so much as in like the Knives Out or Glass Onion, although it does have a similar kind of vibe, but it's not quite so intricate. It's more, it's kind of making a bit of a point, but it's still a good watch, and she enjoyed it. It's got some legitimately funny stuff in there along with the points it's trying to make. So that is my pick, The Menu. And quick projects before we wrap up. William.
I have a new looper out. Surprise, surprise. So this is one with AI generated image that I tweaked, and it's called Till Deaf. And DF.
Look at that.
Pseudo heavy metal cover. But yeah, so yeah, lots of fun there. I had to remove a lot of extra chins and nose holes, but I got something okay out of it.
You got a ways to go.
Yeah. So yeah, worked out in the end, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it, and it seems to be getting pretty good traction.
What's the sound or the vibe on these beats?
These ones are sort of a little heavier, a little bit more
humanoid vampire brainiac heavier, as Gray might say.
Yes, very much so. A little bit more raw, some distortion added on some of them. So yeah, and particularly that it's sort of faster. Some of the beats are pretty fast. So people seem to dig that just for a change. So that was part of what I was going for, and it seems to be going over well.
Where can people find your beats, Will?
Table Beats app and tableist.net. The link there is to tableist.net, which actually has a web looper if you just want to listen to them.
Nice. And last but not least, Tasia, because it's, I was going to say a week with a Thursday in it. Last Thursday, you had another video for us. What was it about this time?
The best free workout apps for 2023. It wasn't a Google one. What do you know? I put out this video every year to give the peeps, you know, some free workout inspo for the year. So if you guys are looking to move your body, watch my video.
What are the kinds of things that you look for in a workout app?
I'm cheap, so it has to at least have a free offering. It can be paid. You can have like paid, you know, add-ons, but it has to be free. You have to be able to, like, I like integration with, you know, either the health app or your smartwatch or something like that. I like ones that can track nutrition as well. They don't all have to. I like ones where you can get like quick workouts in and then get on with your day and go. So that's kind of, you know, a plethora.
Excellent. And where can people find out more about your work?
They can head to youtube.com/Tasia Custodi.
Or TasiaCustodi.com.
True.
And you can find out more about us, momentous.tv/links. And next week, believe it or not, is episode 100. Will we make it? If there's not some global conflagration.
Great, thanks.
So we'll see how many balloons there are, how many earthquakes there are. Hearts go to the people of Turkey and Syria. 7.8 on the Richter scale is no fun at all. So keep them in your thoughts. But we hope you and your loved ones have a week that is truly what?
Momentous.